You are not ruling out military force to take Greenland.
I don't rule it out.
Donald Trump strikes again. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Donald Trump dropping an absolute bomb on the movie industry in Canada. How will Mark Carney handle this? We've also got one of Carney's first scandals here coming to light. We've got an Australian senator blasting globalists like Mark Carney. Got a bunch of updates. Donald Trump talking about taking Greenland. Let's jump into this. First off, we've got Mark Carney and his good buddy here, Telesat CEO Dan Goldberg. So remember back at the end of last year, Francois Philippe Champagne, Justin Trudeau made a deal with Telesat Lightspeed to essentially give them taxpayer money interest-free for years, a couple $2 billion. Well, that money's been flowing through to the bank accounts now, as we see here. $600 million has been sent over to Telesat Lightspeed. Now, I was thinking about this. I thought initially this satellite company wasn't going to go anywhere. This was just straight up them handing over billions. They can make money off the interest. They can pay themselves big paychecks, but they're not going to make satellites. But after watching an episode with Tucker Carlson and a lady who used to work at the White House or worked in the US government, she basically said these global elitists like Mark Carney want to have a communication system that they control as part of their global agenda to take over the world. That's one of the base bedrock things they need is a communication system. So in this case, they could be doing it through Canada, but having it controlled under someone that's good friends with Mark Carney. Another thing they want to do is switch to digital currency, central bank digital currency, because then they can turn off people's money like they turned off bank accounts for the truckers, or they turned off that PPC candidate's bank account just a month and a half ago. With cash, you can't do that. You can't turn it off. So that's all about control. So is that what Telesat Lightspeed is about? Time will tell, I guess, but you can see here $600 million flowing over to his buddy. This is a ripe conflict of interest. Mark Carney was financial advisor at this time. Elon Musk has already got satellites in space. We shouldn't be funding this. So next up, there's a lot of talk about this riding here, the Milton East Halton Hills South riding. Parmgill had won it by like 290 votes, and now it's flipped back to Katrina Tesser with 29 votes. So what's in question here is the rejected ballots, 412 of them. Yeah, that's quite a few, as Wyatt Claypool also says here. It's a legitimate question since it's such a high rate of rejected ballots. I'm pretty sure this one's going to judicial review, so a judge will look at this versus just people counting them. I don't know if there's scrutineers for the judge. When it gets to a certain point where it's so low, it's a judicial recount. Next up, we got Donald Trump dropping an absolute nuclear bomb on the movie industry in Canada. He says the movie industry in America is dying a very fast death. Other countries are offering all sorts of incentives to draw in our filmmakers and studios away from the United States. Hollywood and many other areas within the USA are being devastated. This is a concerted effort by the nations and therefore a national security threat. It is, in addition to everything else, messaging and propaganda. Therefore, I am authorizing the Department of Commerce and the United States Trade Representative, get this, to immediately begin the process of instituting a 100% tariff on any and all movies coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. We want movies made in America again. So this is going to absolutely crush Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Halifax, Winnipeg. There's multiple cities where the movie industry is absolutely booming. There's going to be more job layoffs, more tough times for people in Canada. What will Mark Carney do? He can't blame Pierre Poilievre. He can't point the finger at anyone else. It's all up to him now. Is he going to save the day? Is he going to pull out his old Brookfield Trump card and play that? As this guy says here, I thought Carney was going to make Orange Man go away. Vancouver's a hub for film. This will kill the entire industry in Canada. Yeah, so Vancouver and Toronto, the huge hubs, they're both going to get rocked hard. This guy says Toronto also, I wonder if the CBC will increase production to offset with all their new funding. Our elbows aren't high enough yet, I guess. Talking to friends in the industry, this is a bomb. There's panic right now. The industry was already getting decimated with changing AI landscape. EB will stop the Orange Man. Yeah, EB ain't doing anything. EB should offer to put US booze back on the shelves in trade for film. BC, Alberta, and Ontario have been aggressively undercutting the US industry with massive subsidies for many years. The piper is now going to be paid. Next up, we got a clip coming from Malcolm Roberts, this Australian senator, absolutely blasting globalists, WF elite types, saying he knows exactly what they did and he's coming after them.
It's become clear that people in this country and globally have been steamrolled. It is also clear that it has been coordinated globally. It is also clear that it has been integrated, not just over 6 months, not just over 2.5 years, but it has been planned over decades. The changes to legislation in this country were done so that they could control doctors and people. But the people are waking, and it's thanks to people like Dr. Altman and all the presenters here today, thanks to people like Senator Babette and Craig Kelly. We know And we knew that this is all bullshit and that we've been had. But we are going to hound you down, the people that are guilty. We are going to hound you down and hold you accountable. And we will expose your global agenda so that the people of Australia can be free in the future. Because I love my kids and I'm looking forward to my grandkids. And we are going to save this country.
This is refreshing to hear coming from politicians, or a senator, in this case, from Australia. Globalists are doing everything they can to advance their agenda to create a centralized world controlled and directed by the small elite. Their standard operating procedures include intimidating and lying to the global public. We've been hoodwinked for a long time. Next up, we got Vasi Kapelos with David Coletto from Abacus Data, breaking down who immigrants voted for.
One that sticks out, the area is in Ontario. Brampton, Cambridge, Niagara, Kitchener South, like some parts of the 905 and then Southwest Ontario. How significant a shift do you think that is?
I think it's a big shift. I think if you think of, as you said, Brampton, York region, I think my parents in Richmond Hill are watching right now, their riding flipped from Liberal to Conservative. There was an interesting pattern that where there is a higher proportion of immigrants, the Liberal vote went down and the Conservative vote went up. So, you know, we can't make a perfect correlation, but there seems to be a relationship between those two variables, that something was going on in certain communities, communities with higher proportions of South Asian Canadians, Chinese Canadians, even Italian Canadians in Vaughan Woodbridge. We saw a big swing away from the Liberals to the Conservatives there. And I also think there's something related in that those are affluent parts of the Greater Toronto Area, but they're also folks who are carrying very large mortgages. And we know that one of the things that I think drove the dissatisfaction with the Trudeau government was the rapid increase in interest rates, which wasn't their doing, but was very much blamed on them. And I think these were communities where the cost of living, the price of housing were still big factors, along with, I think, some culturally and socially conservative issues that, like crime as well, that helped the Conservatives get an audience where they hadn't over the last number of elections.
First off, I totally believe that the immigrants that have been here for a while, they are voting Conservative because they want to have a good life. They don't want to have things out of control. These are people that came from countries where there was communism and things they were getting away from. They don't want to see that come into this country. And I've seen hundreds of those comments. So I totally believe this. Places like Richmond and others that have more immigrants from specific regions. In the case of Carleton, we're seeing newer immigrants who've only had citizenship for 1 or 2 years voting Liberal because someone in Immigration Canada, allegedly the Liberals were telling them they needed to vote Liberal to keep their citizenship. Even if that isn't the case, a lot of these people, if they came here as refugees, they're getting a lot of money from the government, then they think the government's good and they'll just support the Liberals because they're getting free money, especially if they're coming from places where they had no money and now they're getting all this stuff. They would have loyalty to the government. That's what the Liberals are doing. They're trying to build loyalty out of new voters because the current voters here hate the Liberals. Sadly, that's not the case for half the country, but half our country doesn't know what's going on in our country. Just going back here to what Coletto said.
One of the things that I think drove the dissatisfaction with the Trudeau government was the rapid increase in interest rates, which wasn't their doing, but was very much blamed on them. And
rapid increases in interest rates wasn't their doing? Justin Trudeau printed more money than all other prime ministers combined, Coletto. Justin Trudeau with Mark Carney as his economic advisor were the absolute definition and reason why inflation spikes so badly in this country. We can see this graph here where Trudeau spent literally double the money supply since he came into office. It's a 50% cut in value to anyone who saves or earns Canadian dollars. This is the ultimate thief. This is the world event spending, but he just kept on spending afterwards. Just spend, spend, spend. We can see it here, all of Trudeau's spending versus all other prime ministers combined. And with all that spending comes inflation. This comes directly from the governor of Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklin, last year, where he says all of Trudeau's spending isn't helping bring inflation down.
Last time I was here, I think I said government spending on goods and services this year was forecast to grow at about 2.25%. That has now moved up to 2.75%. That is somewhat above 2%. So yeah, that is not helpful in trying to get inflation down.
So I have no idea what David Coletto is talking about.
Rapid increase in interest rates, which wasn't their doing.
They lost immigrants from the 80s and 90s, the ones who worked hard and didn't get a free ride. The current ones are getting, the ones not exploiting the system. Yeah, this is well said. Suddenly Liberals have become anti-immigration. I can even show how this directly correlates. 2020, 2022, and 2024 would be about here. Well, if we take a look at the interest rate for the Bank of Canada, 2022, 2024, you see how it looks exactly the same? Trudeau printed so much money that the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklin, had to increase the interest rates to try to suppress the effects of all his money printing. What we're going to see here next is Andrew Scheer's invited on by David Cochrane to CBC, and then Cochrane gets into an argument about whether money was printed or not. It's insane.
What the Liberal Party did by dumping a sitting prime minister, suspending Parliament, having a rush leadership race with a new leader without really the time for Canadians to get to know, all under the threat of a U.S. Tariffs that dominated the news cycle. I mean, these are conditions that the Liberals should not count on happening again. Whereas our new voters are voting for us because of policies, because they see in our party a solution to the cost of living crisis, to the fact that their communities aren't as safe, the fact that they can't afford to own a home or move out of their parents' basement. So I'm incredibly optimistic about our ability to build off of our gains this time, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to finish the job in the next election.
Right, but your party may not be able to rely on post-COVID inflation crisis that was fueled by war in the breadbasket of Europe and supply.
David, you know this. You know that inflation is caused when governments print money.
Well, okay.
That's what the Liberals did. The Liberals flooded the economy with brand new cash. It has nothing to do.
They spent money. They didn't print money. The Bank of Canada did not increase the number of banknotes in circulation in the economy. They used settlement balances. They used settlement balances to buy government bonds to put liquidity. I'm not being dishonest.
They created money out of thin air.
David Cochrane is blatantly lying here.
They expanded the money supply. You know this.
They did not permanently increase the money supply, Mr. Scheer. But anyway, I don't have an argument on monetary policy. They used settlement balances to buy bonds, to lower interest rates, put liquidity into the banking system, and then they removed those settlement balances over time. So
They didn't do that, though. They didn't remove those settlement balances. So we've essentially still inflated the money supply. David Cochrane knows that. He just read that off his sheet. He had a list of things to read off to contradict Andrew Scheer because he knew this was coming. Just to break down the settlement balances for anyone who doesn't know, it's like the Bank of Canada having a piggy bank. They'll invest that money or loan that money, but when the world event comes around, they inject that money into the economy, but they leave that money too long. It's the same as printing money, having inflation. You have to pull that money back out of the economy. That's where the discrepancy is here that David Cochrane isn't being truthful about. And that's what we see with this graph here. The Liberals injected all of this money, but they didn't take it all back out. It should go back down to zero. And we look where we're at today. This is 2022. Right now, it's down at about 130 billion. It has most definitely created inflation, the same as printing money.
Are you denying that there is more currency, whether it's digital or real, in the Canadian economy today? Are you denying?
I'm saying they use settlement balances, and you're calling it money. There may be a small marginal increase, but it is not anyway. Everybody.
It's like $750 billion of money they printed, which is more than all other prime ministers combined. This is the problem we have in Canada. When you have this kind of crap being pushed out by the national broadcaster, which are blatant lies, they should be charged and fined. And whoever's deciding to put this out, whether it's David Cochrane or someone above him, should be put in jail for this. David Cochrane is partially correct, but he is disingenuous because by taking on over $700 billion in new debt, the government did increase the money supply, but it was in the form of debt. This debt created inflation. As I replied on this video here, this is straight from the Bank of Canada's K1 report, massive increase in printed money supply. And when money supply is cranked up, inflation cranked up, then the Bank of Canada has to increase that interest rate to follow to try to ease that. I mean, a couple more graphs here to show what's going on. Here's a 12-month percent change in Canada's consumer price index. This is all Liberals printing money. Moving ahead here, we've got Donald Trump with some more bold statements, including his desire to take over Greenland with military force. This one here, Donald Trump seemed positively delighted about the impact he had on Canada's federal election. This one, Trump says, highly unlikely U.S. will ever use military force to annex Canada. Highly unlikely.
Let's move on to Canada. You have long talked about making Canada the 51st state. There's obviously a new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who you spoke to after his victory. He says that you didn't talk to him in that call about making Canada a 51st state.
No, he called me. He was very nice, and I congratulated him. He had a victory. It's a very close victory. It's, there's no majority or anything, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult, I think, for him to run. But he nevertheless had a victory, and he's a very nice man, I think.
Do you plan to talk to him about making Canada a 51st state?
He wants to come and see me. He's going to come this week or next week.
So will you talk to him about making Canada a 51st state, annexing Canada?
I'll always talk about that. You know why? We subsidize Canada to the tune of $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. In fact, we don't want their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't even want their energy. We have more than they do. We don't want their lumber. We have great lumber. All I have to do is free it up from the environment.
So this is more of Donald Trump setting the stage for the negotiation. That's what this is, because he knows Carney's going to see this.
Mental lunatics. We don't need anything that they have. We're giving them. I asked Mr. Trudeau, who I call Governor Trudeau. I said, not Prime Minister, Governor. I said, Governor Trudeau, could I ask you one question? Why are we giving you $200 billion? Why are we subsidizing Canada? If Canada was a state, it wouldn't cost us. It would be great. It would be such a great, it would be a cherished state. And if you look at our map, if you look at the geography, I'm a real estate guy at heart. When I look down at that without that artificial line that was drawn with a ruler many years ago, it was just an artificial line, goes straight across. You don't even realize what a beautiful country it would be.
If we look at the map, this map with Mark Carney and Donald Trump, what is going to happen here? Both these guys are used to being in a position of power. Donald Trump has been rich and wealthy for a long time, and he gets what he wants. But so does Mark Carney. And clearly these guys are tied together by this SEC report where Brookfield refused to hand over information on the Qatari bailout property here. Something else to note that I just found out is this here. So Brookfield shutters venture unit that helped Elon Musk buy Twitter. So just before the election, you can see here Brookfield Asset Management has quietly shuttered its venture capital arm Brookfield Growth. According to people with knowledge on the matter, Brookfield is in the process of moving some of Brookfield Growth assets and staff to a division known as Pine Grove Capital. Brookfield provided $250 million in 2022 to help fund Elon Musk's buyout of Twitter, which was the largest check ever written by Brookfield Growth at the time. So basically, Brookfield Asset Management closed Brookfield Growth Fund, moved it all over to Pine Grove Capital. So some restructuring. Is this a way to detach Elon Musk, Brookfield, Mark Carney, all of that? If we look at when this happened, it was February 13th. So just a month or so before the election. It's very suspicious.
I don't think the American public wants me to pay $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada. Again, remember this.
Yeah.
We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything. We do very little business with Canada. They do all of their business practically with us. They need us. We don't need them.
You and I talked, and I asked you if you would rule out military force to take Greenland, and you said no, you don't rule out anything. Would you rule out military force to take Canada?
Well, I think we're not going to ever get to that point. It could happen. Something could happen with Greenland. I'll be honest. We need that for national and international security.
But not
I
with
think
Canada?
It's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
Okay, but you don't rule it out for Greenland.
And by the way, Canada, they spend less money on military than practically any nation in the world. They pay NATO less than any nation. They think we're subsidized. They think we are going to protect them. And really, we are. But the truth is, they don't carry their full share, and it's unfair to the United States and our taxpayers.
But you are not ruling out military force to take Greenland.
I don't rule it out. I don't say I'm going to do it, but I don't rule out anything. No, not there. We need that. We need Greenland very badly. Greenland is a very small amount of people, which we'll take care of and we'll cherish.
It's interesting. He just said we need Greenland very badly, admitting that, yeah, they need that for national security.
Them and all of that. But we need that for international security.
Yeah, he said the quiet part out loud. I mean, we knew this, but usually he won't say it directly because that's how he bargains. So he's laying the groundwork here to negotiate with Mark Carney, saying, oh, we don't need your oil, we don't need your lumber, all that kind of stuff. What's going to happen between these two guys? Because they're both used to being in charge, being in control. They're not going to want to have to really give up anything. I mean, Trump's in the power position here, not to mention all these other connections in the background here between the two of them. At this point, there's a lot of tension, a lot of buildup to this first meeting here with Mark Carney and Donald Trump. Carney could have done this a month ago for the benefit of people. He waited and used it for the election to self-serve. The Liberals dragged out their leadership race for months. The SDTC documents had Parliament frozen for months. Parliament has been functioning for the better part of half a year. And finally, he's going to go down and deal with Trump. I can't wait to see that footage. It is going to tell us so much, because you can tell when someone walks up to someone and they don't know them and they're really meeting for the first time, or if they've known each other this entire time.